to another episode of the Moviescramble podcast. We have another full house for you tonight, so once again you're in for a treat as we are joined by myself and Mary and John. First up, Mary, how are you?
I'm really well. I'm hoping when this goes out, this will actually be episode 50. So I would just like to say thank you so much to anyone who has listened, downloaded, commented, shared. It's been a real learning curve for us, but it's also been loads of good fun. So thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, Andy. John, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I realised as well it was 50, so it's a wee bit of a milestone.
Absolutely.
In total, we've done nearly 100 pods with all the wee extra bits and stuff like that.
Yay!
So it's been very interesting so far. It's been a real education as well. Had to learn how to edit, which may or may not have worked, depending on what how you look at it. And I'm always looking for that wee nugget when I'm editing, just to make Mary look bad right from the very start of the podcast.
Well, I think you found that quite successfully on all 50 episodes.
I mean, the greatest respect, it's not like a short material.
Yeah.
Totally fair.
Yep, I call it Nazi gold.
Oh my God. No comment.
I'll the SS over there. Anyway, so in this new brand spanking episode of the Moviescramble podcast, which will, as Mary said, episode 50, we're going to discuss the new horror film from Blumhouse and director Scott Derrickson, The Black Phone.
Hello?
Don't hang up.
Who are you?
You know all our names? You're getting out of here.
Please let the dreams be real.
See the wall in front of you? I tore a long cable loose from down there.
Hang up the phone! Ah! What you made me do?
Please hurry.
You remember what I told you?
There's someday I have to stand up for myself.
Someday is today, Finn.
Based on a short story by Joe Hill. This is based in 1978 and follows a sort of coming-of-age style drama of young kids, kind of in that kind of transition period of getting older. You've got the main kid, Finney Blake, played by Mason Thames, and he's kind of like, he's bullied at school, his dad's an alcoholic, his sister gets beaten. It's quite cliched in a lot of ways. But unfortunately, this fortuitous summer, kids are going missing, abducted by the infamous and notorious grabber, as the kids are calling him, played by Ethan Hawke. Vinny becomes the latest victim of the grabber and gets kidnapped and wakes up in a basement. Soundproofed, with no way to cry for help or get out. The phone rings one day, and when he answers it, it's not necessarily the help he expects, as the ghosts of the grabber's former victims start speaking to him and think this is Finney is a way they can get their revenge by proxy, by giving him the tips to help him where they failed and were ultimately killed by the grabber. I feel like this film got advertised years ago. I feel like the trailers have been doing the rounds for a long, long time, and it has been delayed a few times. And I think it was actually originally premiered at a film festival last September. So in terms of it coming out in June, it's been a while for it to hit the mainstream cinema releases. I'm a big fan of Blumhouse films in general. I'm a big fan of Ethan Hawke, especially when it comes to his horror films. I think they sometimes fly a wee bit under the radar. Films like Sinister and The Purge. His performances anyway, because you don't really associate him much with horror films. You still think him as that kind of indie darling. Joe Hill, famous horror writer, and Scott Derrickson, famous horror director, returning back to his roots here. Famously started in horror with Hellraiser 5, as me and John have discussed in previous podcasts. But yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I was looking forward to it. I had high hopes for it. For me, it did not disappoint. John, what about yourself?
Same, did not disappoint at all. I was intrigued by the film even before I saw it because of the first trailer, was really sparse. There was very, very little in it. And so obviously with the phone ringing, and it's just, you're going, what's going to happen next? So immediately I was interested in it. And when I actually saw the film, I just thought, this is fantastic. It's beautifully paced. It's very well acted. Some cracking performances in there from both adults and children. And it ticked every single box that I could want from a reasonably low budget horror film. Loved it.
Mary, what about yourself?
Yeah, no, I would echo what John said. The first trailer kind of had me interested because it didn't really give too much away. And then I kind of forgot about it for a while because I agree with you. The trailer seemed to come out like almost, it feels like years ago. It's probably not. I've just, again, lost all sense of time. But I liked how it did outstay its welcome. It was very like sort of neat in the sense that it was kind of like once it got going, it was almost sort of like one location. It wasn't like your silly jump scares. There was a couple of things that kind of made me jump out my skin, but nothing ridiculous. And I just thought it was horror because it was very plausible. You know, it was scary because these things do happen and have happened. And I think that's where the horror element of it came in. And it was also quite a frustrating watch because obviously you're wanting him to get out of the room and break free, and every sort of failed attempt, you're just like, damn it, with him. And yeah, I mean, really well acted by Ethan Hawke and the child actors as well. I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, definitely. In regards to child actors, there you had mentioned Mason Thames, it's Finney Blake, and Madeline McGraw playing his sister, who starts experiencing psychic dreams. And that's what I really like about this film. It's a horror film with elements to it. You've got the serial killer element, which is very grounded in reality, as you mentioned there. That's quite terrifying because it's very plausible. You've got a supernatural element. You've got two supernatural elements. You've got a psychic child and ghosts of former victims. It can be difficult to juggle that many different horror elements and make it into the one cohesive story, because most films are, this is a ghost story, this is a serial killer story, this is a slasher story, this is a haunted house story. They all have their own niche, but you try and overlap certain elements, it doesn't always work. Like take Friday the 13th Part 7, where Jason Voorhees fights a psychic teenager. It's a bit weird. And these elements all come together and work very well. Nothing really feels out of place. And they all feel quite separate in their own little bubbles in a strange way as well, because you've got the ghost element, which kind of revolves around Finney, the psychic element, which revolves around his sister, and the serial killer element, which is Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke isn't plagued by the ghost in the same way, so the supernatural element stays in its lane, for lack of a better term, and doesn't get silly at any point. You know, this is a spoiler, and if you don't see the ghost fly out the phone and like drags Ethan Hawke into hell or anything, you know, it's for a supernatural film, it's got a very grounded base to it, and I think that's a hard thing to pull off. But we mentioned Scott Derrickson as a veteran of the horror genre. He's made some cracking films such as Sinister, which has been considered to be the scientifically proven scariest film ever made, and The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which is a very good film as well. And here was a 5, which was really good. But Mary, you're not known for being the biggest horror fan on the podcast.
No.
So what was it about the film that drew you to it?
I think it's the reality of it, right? So like I said, I think it's very plausible that, you know, there's a crazy man in the street who likes to grab children and put them in the back of his van or whatever. What I liked about it in terms of the horror elements was, again, that felt very real. So for me, I'm looking at the character of Gwen and the horrors that she's experiencing in her home. And that scene in the kitchen where her dad is beating her up was brutal. Like, I really felt extremely uncomfortable watching it. Those tears felt real from the actress, Madeline McGraw. She was phenomenal. And I kind of thought that her supernatural powers were from trauma or grief. It was almost like because she was so trauma bonded to her brother, that's how she knew she was going to help him. They'd obviously lost their mother. They were getting really badly abused by their alcoholic father. It almost felt like a trauma response. So in a way, I wasn't looking at it going, that's ridiculous. You know, how is she seeing it? I felt like I understood her as a character and I understood where these, you know, elements were coming from. And the same goes for the ghosts as well. Like if you are trapped in on the whole, windowless, airless room by the local nutter in a devil mask, I imagine you would start to imagine, am I the first person who's been here? Well, no, because I've seen this in the newspaper and I've seen these posters up for missing children. It all felt very, very real to me. And I like that type of horror because it's not jump scares for being silly. It's things that could actually happen. And that to me is far more sinister than anything that's jumping out of walls or, as you say, pulling things through a phone or whatever. It all felt very real. And I thought it was brilliantly done.
Yourself, John?
It felt like a horror film right from the start, based on the environment they were living in. Obviously, they were living in, I think it was a suburb of Denver. So it wasn't like an American teen horror film where you had like really good-looking American teens and all this sort of stuff. It wasn't like that at all. It was a wee bit more muted because you got that in terms of the colour palette. It was all browns and greys and everything. It wasn't great. And I think that's got to do with the fact of where it was supposed to be. I don't think, because obviously Denver's so high up, it's about a mile above sea level or something, isn't it? So it's not, sometimes not the most picturesque place, although I'm sure our listener in Denver will send us photos to tell us differently. And it was like they were in a horror environment from the start, like you say, the abusive alcoholic father, the way that Finney was treated at school, that he was bullied at school, and that first fight that you saw, which involved the wee Karate Kid guy.
He was great.
You thought, oh, that's, you thought it was just going to be a bit of a fight, and he would just like deck the guy, and that would be over in about 30 seconds, because you knew he could obviously handle himself. But then he just kept getting tore into him, and it was just this bloody pulp of a face, and you're thinking, this isn't a normal sort of mainstream horror film. This is something just a wee bit different. This is setting the scene for something you might not expect. So when he was actually grabbed, and I really like the name The Grabber, it reminds me of like 1970s television presenters, that kind of thing there. Those sort of names as well. It almost seemed to Finney like a bit of a relief. Because he always assumed that he was going to be grabbed because of what his sister kept saying to him. She was just saying, well, yeah, he's still out there, he's still going to get people and all that. So he had this sort of resigned air to him that he was going to be taken at some point. So when it actually happened, and he was in a room and it was deadly quiet and there was no sound at all, it was just him, it was almost like a wee bit of a relief for him, obviously only for a couple of seconds, and then he realised, fuck, what am I doing here? This is really, really bad. But yeah, I liked the way that it built up to that. It took its time. It didn't rush to get anywhere. You got a wee sense of who the grabber was to begin with, but they never really tried to hide it all that much, which I found to be very refreshing. So you weren't going to have any sort of big reveal in that way. They had other ways of doing that with the way that the grabber looked, for instance, and I think we'll probably talk about that a wee bit more. But his whole look about him was far more scary in the way that all unfolded. I thought that was particularly well done. It just sort of ramped up the tension all the way through it. And there was the first interaction between the grabber and Finney when he was in the basement, and he said, no, I'm not going to touch you. I'm not going to hurt you. And you're thinking, so what is, or who is, So there was all that going on. Now, whether that came to fruition or not, watch the film. But it certainly increased the tension, just ratcheted up just that wee bit more. So you were finding yourself just more and more concerned about his welfare and how he was going to get out of this. So yep, absolutely superb.
Yeah, and there's that scene in the basement when Finney wakes up and the grabber's just sitting staring at him, and he's just like watching you. It's just so like skin crawling, creepy, and there's definitely some not so subtle undertones to what the grabber does with these kids before he kills them, but they don't make it overtly gratuitous to the point that you're repulsed by it, because you're repulsed by it, but you're repulsed by the suggestion as opposed to the in-your-face element of it, basically. And
but that's always worse, because it always comes back to, and this is why, I always refer to that Hounds of Love, because they shut the door and you don't see what's going on. So in your own head, you start to think, oh my God, does he do this? Does he do that? What does he do with all these kids? Because what I quite liked about it was he wasn't picking on like a particular type of kid. So it was male, female, tall, short, strong, scrawny. So you're kind of going, okay, what is this guy actually doing here? And then, as you say, there's a couple of kind of hints, and you're like, am I reading too much into this? Is this as dark as it's alluding to? Like, I quite like the fact that it lets you do your own thinking as well.
Yeah. And it's about thinking grounded idea as well. It's so based on that idea of the urban legend of the serial killer, children's entertainer, in this case a magician, driving about in the van, abducting kids. He's driving about in plain sight as well. You see the van a few times early on in the film, just in the background and that, driving about, and it's creepy. But Ethan Hawke's performance, we spoke about the child actors in this, and I think a part that makes this film really effective is it is actual children. It's children playing roughly, if not their age. These are like Dawson's Creek style teenagers here. playing kids. These are children playing the role. Ethan Hawke's performance is so understated. He's overly creepy in one way, but he wears that mask for the most part. So he never really has to ham it up. He doesn't have to like chew the scenery or anything, which I think would just detract from his menace and how sinister he is. But he does wear that mask quite a lot, so you don't see a lot of his facial expressions. What was your thoughts on that? Not like Ethan Hawke as an actor. A lot of indie stuff, did some horror stuff as you mentioned. In this, he's very rarely got that mask off. So he's having to act with that mask on. And the mask changes sometimes from a full mask covering his face to covering half his face. What's your thoughts on his performance?
I thought there was going to be a reason for the mask. I thought maybe he was good, because I was trying to work out why it was only half or why it sometimes changed. And I thought maybe there's like a disfigurement, because I thought if he's going to, and I said this in the review, if he's going to bump them off, he doesn't need to hide who he is. So to me, it was just like, okay, this is just another way to scare these kids. It's just another part of the game for him, is to really make them feel as scared as possible. But the main thing for me was, and again, it brings us back to how much it's grounded in reality, was we didn't get some sob story about how his character was like, perpetuating the cycle of abuse, or he did a shit time. He was just a bad guy. And I think it was just, there are some people in life who are just bad people. And he was one of them. And I really appreciated the fact that it didn't give him any background or context. He was just a bad guy doing bad things and trying to scare these children as much, because obviously, maybe he was getting pleasure from the fright or whatever. But I liked, once I stopped trying to kind of unpick it too much, I liked what they did with the mask element of it.
Regarding the mask, I've just got a theory. I thought of it as you mentioned that. Is it possible that he was wearing the mask to hide his own self from the kids, because it helped distance him from what he was doing?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was all just sort of part of his process. He didn't want to, the mask was a sort of barrier between him and the kids, so that he didn't feel anything for them. There's no empathy at all. And it's a way of stopping that, just shutting that down completely. And I think he liked the fact that he kept the kids scared all the time. Just that was all, it's what worked for him in terms of his process and what he was ultimately going to do. And I like you say, Mary, I like the fact that you didn't get a backstory for him, but you didn't really get an understanding of what he actually did either. That was left up to your own imagination. You knew that these kids disappeared, never to be seen again, but what actually happened to them? And you didn't even really get a flavour of that from when we were in the room with Finney either, because one of the first interactions, he brought down food for him and he brought water and he says, here you go. And he's like, obviously Finney was like, no, I'm not touching it. And he says, well, why would I drug you? I've already got you here. If I wanted to drug you, I would have done it, when we were in the van, or would I killed you when we were in the van? And you're thinking, yeah, right enough, yeah.
There was that scene, and this is in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler. But when he comes down and he asks Finney what his name is, and Finney gives him a false name, but he knows he's lying because he saw Finney's name in the paper. And he throws the paper down and he goes, I was starting to like you. I was even going to let you go. And he closes the door and you think, okay, we know he wasn't going to let him go. But to be a kid thinking that hope, that kind of optimism that maybe he might have just been able to convince him.
Yeah, it was cruel. It was another bit of mental torture.
Horrendous. And it was just so vicious. But it was the way even Hawke's voice in the film is very interesting. It's got a childlike quality to it. Mm-hmm. That he's almost, as you said, John, he's got no empathy whatsoever, but it's a really fake empathy he tries to display. He's like, oh, here's some juice, here's some food, yeah, my friend, I won't do anything. He says something like, I won't do anything to you that you wouldn't like.
Yeah, that was the comment. That was the comment that really got me, because I was like, oh, my stomach's just turned. Because again, I think it was when you sort of realise the sort of bread, like range and bread to the victims, I'm just like, what the fuck has been going on in that basement? Because it was that comment that made me go, oh, that's, yeah. I agree with what you're saying about his voice, like, because sometimes it was quite masked by the mask, for want of a better phrase, but other times it did feel quite light and sort of tinkly and almost like, oh, that's your children's entertainer voice, because that's the sort of light, floaty. And we never really got a sense of who he was, because we don't actually know if he was a children's entertainer or just a guy driving around in a van with some balloons. But it was like, and again, that's what made him so fascinating, because it was like, who are you really? And, you know, how are you able to do this so brazenly? Because we see the van go back and forth, and it's just, when you think of some of the victims who were strong kids, you just think, how are you doing this? It was kind of a really fascinating villain.
And you're spot on there as well, the idea that, I mean, this is based on a short story, so it's not some magnum opus novel or that. And I think it's really clever what I've done is, I've not read the story, but they've stayed true to the source material. They haven't tried to flesh it out to fill time by going, right, here's some backstory of the grabber. As you said, maybe here's his childhood. Let's try and fill and pad some things out here. They went, no. Here's what he is. You don't need to know all these details. The fact that you're asking these questions at the end of the film is good, because you want to know more. But it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the film that they're absent. And we don't need to know his backstory. We don't need to know more about him. He's a child killer. That's all we need to know.
You never see him as a normal person out in the world. Mm-hmm. It's just that the film isn't interested in showing that aspect of him, because in a way that kind of detracts from how you imagine him to be. Because you can imagine, like, I think it would take away some of the impact of the performance if you saw him as a normal person just interacting with, you know, like going down the shops or whatever, because then it's not imagined anymore. It's actually there for you to judge and contrast and compare. Because when he's in the grabber mode, he's very still. He doesn't move about, like you say, when like he's just sitting there when Finney wakes up, or he always just stands at the door. He tends not to raise his voice at all. It's all on a fairly level plane all the time. He does get angry, obviously, but it's measured, and that's creepier than an outlandish performance. Of course, without spoiling anything, there are a couple of wee bits in it that you go, oh Jesus. Nearly shot myself. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think jump scares get too much of a bad rap in terms of the term jump scare, because there's some very, very effective jump scares in movies, and jump scares are there to make you jump. Unfortunately, a lot of films do them badly, and they do them too often, the same film, and they start to get that bad reputation of this film's a jump scare film. But even the quote-unquote elevated horror films will still have jump scares in them. They just utilise them a different way, because Jaws has 2 jump scares in it. And Spielberg's famously said, like, he wished he only kept one, because he felt when he done the first one, the second one was ruined. Personally, I don't really agree with that. I don't think it made the second one any less effective. But I do see his point. If you're going to do a jump scare, keep them to a minimum, otherwise you start to expect them. And I think that's the problem with a lot of horror films, is they do them too much at the beginning. It's like catch them out of cupboards, that kind of thing. That when the real scares happen, you've almost desensitized to it, because you'd expect it's been a roller coaster. You can only go up and down so many times before you start to go, right, let's just get me off this now. This film keeps the jump scares to a minimum, and when they are used, it's very, very effectively, and they're sustained. It's not a case of then you sit down, the jump scare happens, and it keeps you at that level for a bit, and then you can come back down as the scene changes. And I think that's a really difficult thing for films to do, and it does it really well in here. But regarding Ethan Hawke, though, he was hesitant to take this role on. He didn't want to be remembered as a villain. And then is
that because it was going to time it a lot? Because I think he shot this before Moon Knight. Is that right? So is that the reason why? Because he thought it'd be 2 kind of pieces coming out at once, or just because of his previous?
That would make sense, actually. That would make sense. I suppose I keep forgetting he was in that, but he did say, "Well, I'm in my 50s now. Maybe villains are what I do."
Because a 50-year-old white male is the scariest thing in the world right now if you're a woman. So that's fair. That's fair.
Especially when a line that's sitting shirtless with a belt.
No, that wasn't scary. That wasn't a jump scare. I was like, oh, where's this film going? He does, like, I must admit, I never thought of him as someone who was quite, like, bulky. But that scene in particular, I'm like, as soon as you know he's left the door open, you're just like, don't fucking do it. This is so obviously a trap. But as you say, John, it's the stillness, because he looks so broad. Like, I feel like he fills that kitchen, and he's just sitting. You're not sure if he's awake. You're not sure if he's breathing. He's just sitting. And I was like, this is really, this is more scary than, like, you see, like, the cats jumping out the cupboard, all that sort of thing. It's that sustained terror where you're just like, I have no idea what's happening next, so I'm just going to hold my breath until something else happens, because it's too much. But that was really well done.
Sitting there with his dad bod.
See, that is a dad bod.
That's a dad.
Sorry, Ethan.
As the case with any horror film that's got a little bit of success, this film has been very successful at the box office so far, and critics, for the most part, are enjoying it. There is talk of a sequel. This has actually been by Joe Hill himself, who's pitched the idea to Scott Derrickson, and Scott Derrickson seems to be on board with it. Based on where the sequel ideas are coming from, what's your thoughts? Are you still kind of like, doesn't need it?
It all depends on the story, doesn't it? It all depends on the idea. Now, if the idea is coming from the source of the story in the first place, then you would think it would be pretty good. He's got a good track record, Joe Hill, in terms of his stories. And he's got no reason to want to sully the memory of a good story by pitching an inferior story to follow it up. It doesn't do his brand any good if he's saying, no, I've got an idea for this, and it turns out to be like the difference between Alien and Aliens, and it's the black phone and the black phones, you know? Is it set? is it going to be like Saw? It's going to be like in different locations and they can talk to each other on the phone, you know? Who knows? But
Black Phone 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yes. Yeah, obviously we'd need to be completely separate characters and things like that just to make it work. You would need to introduce other elements.
Go. Like, it's quite a compact...
Yeah.
I'm not going to say neatly tied up with a ribbon, but it's the getting there. I don't really know what else they can do with it. However, as you say, if it's come from the source, then we must place faith in that.
The only thing we mentioned so far, Scott Derrickson mentioned that Joe Hill pitched him a wonderful idea for a sequel.
Okay. That's
all he mentions. The fact that, again, if this was just a studio saying, right, the film's been successful, boom, do a sequel. But, I mean, the short story came out in 2004, so it's possible Joe Hill's had an idea kicking about his head for a while anyway. Yeah, I'll be intrigued, but I personally can't think where the film would go.
Be set in space. They're always set in space, yeah.
The grabber in space.
I suppose it's worth mentioning as well, this film's got an awesome soundtrack.
Oh, it really does, yeah.
It's Mark Corvin did the music for it, same guy that did The Witch and The Lighthouse. So,
really?
There we go. Yeah.
I always think about the original songs, mind you, the soundtrack itself. The score is really good as well. The score is great. It's that 70s summer rock.
Mm-hmm. It's good.
Fox and things like that's really good. But also, you get a look at the film. The cinematography I thought was really interesting, especially the dream sequences, and it has that home movie look to it. That 8mm style, I thought really added an aura of creepiness to it. But
it worked really well, didn't it? It was the whole sort of production all fitted in very well together. Like you say, the music of the time and everything, and the colour palette and the cinematography all kind of blended very well. It'd obviously been very well thought out. So, yeah, I wonder what if they were going to do another one, would it be set in the same time period or later? I suppose possibilities are endless, aren't they?
Do you have an origin story they grab? But I don't know. Who knows?
I don't think that would be particularly good, would it? It's interesting to see, though, that, like you mentioned earlier, how there was a long time gap between the film premiering and actually coming out. I think that was down to Blumhouse, the initial reaction they got to the film. They were originally going to issue it January, February time, and held it back for a summer release because they thought it was going to be a strong film in the summer. They would get a really good reaction, and I think it's turned out that way. I think they've obviously made their money back quite easily on it. Well, they tend to do that anyway, don't they, Blumhouse? With their films. They've got a budget for initial films, and then they up it by something like $5 million for any sequels that they do. So even then, all they need is a decent opening weekend, and they've broken even. So.
And the thing is, I do think a lot of people are at the cinema just now because you've still got Top Gun, you've got Elvis, you've got this, and I think there's like something for everyone, as it were. But I know a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm going to go and see Top Gun and The Black Phone, or Top Gun and Elvis, or Elvis and like people are like they're staying at the cinema for the whole day and they're watching a couple of films. And I think it's definitely benefiting from these really big, numbers being in the cinema because people are going to go and see that as well. I mean, apart from the fact that it's just a generally good film, but I think it's benefiting from the fact that people are excited about the cinema just now, I think. Yeah.
And it's a short film as well. It's only, about an hour and 40 minutes? Yeah. Whereas Elvis is best part of an hour longer than that. Jurassic World, same. It's about 2.5 hours long. So there's something to be said for going into a film that's a bit shorter, especially for the older bladders amongst us.
It's one of those films as well. I mean, it's one of those films as well that it's doing well at the box office, but it's got the potential to also find a new market on demand because, as you mentioned, John, the short runtime of it, it's a very compact, watchable movie. It's not like Top Gun, for example, where you need to see it in the cinema.
Aye.
You know, you could wait and watch this at home, and it just be as enjoyable. And it's a film I think it'd be interesting to watch it. The repeat value, actually, the rewatch value of it would be interesting. Because I'd watch it again.
I think it would hold up. I think it would be just as scary at home.
Yeah, I think there would be a few wee elements that you could pick up in a second watch that you may have missed in the first one. Some of the background stuff, definitely. Not so much with the main story, but obviously there's more of the sister's story. I think you could pick up a wee bit more in that as well, and her interactions with the police and her father and everything as well. So yeah, there's more to sort of glean from it, and I think it would benefit from a second viewing. So yeah.
Yeah, I think
maybe even another wee cinema trip.
Yeah, because I would quite like, now that we've talked about it, I would quite like to watch some of the background stuff. So see, like when Finney was in school, I kind of want to now go, okay, what else was going on in the classroom? Because obviously you're honing in on what's happened to him. I'm like, I want to go back and see what else was happening sort of in the corners, as it were, because I'm sure there was loads of sort of foreshadowing or whatever going on that I've just been so absorbed with him that I've missed. I would like to also see as well that I can't remember the actor's name that plays the dad.
Jeremy Davies.
Yes, he was excellent. Like, that was not a nice, I mean, as much as, like, you know, Ethan Hawke gets to be kind of like this almost sort of like glamorized villain, that was brutal. That's just a man who's completely broken. He's lost his wife, he's lost his job, and he's beaten the shit out of his kids. Like, I thought he did an absolutely phenomenal job with what ultimately is just not a very nice character, but not nice with the backstory, as it were, and with the context, but I thought he did a really good job.
Yeah, he's got a pretty decent filmography as well. He's been in a few decent things.
As soon as I saw his face, I was like, oh, I know who you are. Then I do that thing where I try to like bring up IMDb in my head.
It was Lost, I remember seeing him on.
Yeah, it was Lost.
More than anything else. But he's been in all sorts of things. He was in Justified, so and lots of Arrowverse stuff and things like that as well. So yeah. Interesting.
And also,
interesting actor.
It's also good to see, without giving too much information on the character himself, but James Ransone in the film is Max. Really eager to help neighbour. That brought a bit of levity to the film. Did it fit? Did it not? It's hard to tell, but I quite liked it because it's a very dark film, and sometimes you just need a wee something. Yeah,
it was a weird comic thing for me, I must admit. I'm not 100% convinced on it. However, if something that exciting was happening in my neighbourhood, I'd be out with a red string as well. There's no two ways about it. Of all the elements going on, I felt that was the one that least worked for me, just because it just seemed too funny.
Yeah, definitely.
It was humorous. I do like him as an actor, mind you, so it was good to see him pop up. I know mostly from The Wire, but I'm pretty sure he also was in Sinister 2. Ethan Hawke was in the first one, he was in the second one. The Scott Derrickson's collaborator, C. Robert Cargill, can't pronounce his name.
Cargill. C. Robert Cargill.
C. Robert Cargill. He wrote the film with him, and he said he really wanted Scott Derrickson to direct, but obviously he was caught up with Marvel and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. That didn't work out too well. He left the project and was replaced by Sam Raimi, who's no stranger to the horror genre himself. As much as I really enjoyed The Black Phone, I'm glad we got to see it. A part of me still wants to see, and I enjoyed Doctor Strange. I really want to see Scott Derrickson's Multiverse of Madness. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. I watched Multiverse of Madness at the weekend, and I'd completely forgotten about it already. I thought it was a bit glib, and it wasn't the Marvel horror that I thought it was going to be, which is a shame because it had all the elements that could have made it a really good horror, like the themes of, you know, like grief and loss and sort of coming to terms with your identity. And I thought, oh, this is perfect. This is going to be really scary. And yeah, there's a part of me that's really longing for the Scott Derrickson cut, because I want to see what they achieved before he stepped away.
I mean, you can watch the Multiverse of Madness, you can see Sam Raimi's trying to get his shit in, so to speak, and there's a very clear Sam Raimi style shots and directing the film. But then you never Scott Derrickson walked away from this project because he couldn't do what he wanted, and you kind of think, how horror was this film going to be? Because I remember when it first got announced, and they were saying it's going to be a horror film. It's going to be Marvel's first horror. I'm like, Scott Derrickson, this is going to be. Because I really enjoyed the first Doctor Strange. I thought it was very well done. I'm thinking this is going to be a very interesting movie. What's he going to do? And then he left. I'm like, Then Sam Raimi comes on. You think, oh, great, and you watch it and go, yes, it's still very Marvel.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was very, very safe for me, and I wanted to see something a lot more scary, because it was billed as Marvel's first horror, and I thought this would be perfect. But actually, if it allowed him to step away and make something as good as the Black Phone and that, nice creepy slow burn, then I'll take the hit, as it were.
And I could be totally wrong with this, but I get the impression with Blumhouse as well that Jason Blum gives his directors a lot of creative freedom in what to do. I mean, you get to that kind of stage now, you're looking at Blumhouse films, there's so many coming out, Amazon Originals, things like that not everything's going to be a hit, not everything's going to be quality. I watched one a while ago called Dashcam, which I thought was quite interesting. It was written by the people that did Host films and Shudder, which is really good. And Dashcam is, I really enjoyed it. It's a found footage film, so there's only so much you can do that's original. It's effective for the most part. The main character's really good. And again, it's not a Blumhouse film. And it's a bit off the wall at times. And with this, you kind of think to yourself, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of studio involvement, especially when the fact it's people reporting it's so faithful to the source material. And there's no, let's put in a backstory here, as we mentioned, let's try and do this. It's just let the film just tell its story. And it works for it, in my opinion. But again, I could be wrong. I know Jason Blum's a total psychopath that has creative control over everything.
No, he's got a very good reputation with filmmakers, just because, like I say, he provides the money, provides guidance, but I think he steps back and lets them do what they need to do, because it would be very unusual for one of these films to not make money, no matter the sort of quality of it. And obviously there's a level of quality. They're hiring very accomplished people. Like Scott Derrickson has a very good track record, obviously, with horror films, but they give a chance to sort of first-time directors. Like I said, the guy directed Host. This is only his third film. I think he did one before Host, I'm not sure. But because they cost so little, they make the money back. The film could be a flop, and they would still make the money back on Amazon, Netflix, video on demand, because there is a market for it. There's a name brand attached to it, and I don't think they really they dip below that in any way. So
I was going to say, I think for a lot of horror fans, and even just fans of cinema, I've heard people actually say, "Have you seen the trailer for the new Blumhouse?" as opposed to "Have you seen the trailer for the Black Phone?" So I think there's a kind of that label as a sort of market of quality that you automatically go, "Okay, I'll maybe give that a watch because it's coming from that studio."
Yeah, and the same goes to that stage. I don't know if you noticed watching the Black Phone that the opening credits had a very Marvel Studios feel to it.
Yeah,
they're showing the different properties. I thought, okay, that's like a marker of intent right there, because you've recognised quite a few of the characters that were shown in that intro, and you're thinking, this is a very successful production company, as you mentioned, Emily. I know personally, I will watch a film because Blumhouse has produced it. If I see that name on a film, I'll go and watch it.
Apparently, that's the first time they used that logo. Obviously, like you say, it is almost like a statement of intent. This is what we're going to be like from the future. Yeah, it's quite clever the way they've done it as well, with it going through the house and all that. So aye, very good indeed.
Yeah, and next up this year they've got the end of the Halloween trilogy.
Quite a big IP. Can they pull it back?
I was going to say, I think I'll maybe give that one a wee miss. We're talking about markers of quality, then I'm like, I'm not going to go and see that.
Any more thoughts on the Black Phone?
I've pretty much covered everything I want to. I can't think of anything else. I just noting there, the budget was $16 million and the box office so far is $45 million. So general rule of thumb is you have the budget and then you double it for marketing. So they're already in profit by about $15 million, which, before it even ends its cinema run, it's only been out for, a week?
A week, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty good going.
And also, it's only been out a week and we're already podding it. Like, we are on it, guys.
Must do worse. That's what we have to aim for.
Yeah, we'll just release it in like 2035.
Just because we've recorded it doesn't mean it's actually going to come out anytime soon. Not if I've got anything to do with it.
People listening going, it's a really shame that it made the Black Phone 7.
Apart from you, because you'll be like, it's Black Phone 7.
Yeah, You know me. I love a good horror franchise. I'm almost disappointed in being that co-op ended after 3. Well, that was quite an enthusiastic review of the movie, but in true Moviescramble fashion, is this a film you would recommend, Mary?
Oh, absolutely. I thought it was really well done. And yeah, I'm not known for my love of horror, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
John?
Yep, fun for the whole family. You know, take Granny along. Everybody should see this film. No, it was really, really good. Really enjoyed it. I would recommend it to everybody to watch it. And like you said, if you don't get a chance to see it at the cinema, it will be on a streaming platform near you. So seek it out. It's well worth it.
Recommend it to Mary.
Sorry.
You're too good at that. That's actually a bit freaky.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we'll try and do it every week.
It's also recommended from myself as a unanimous recommended from the Moviescramble team. Please go and see the Black Phone in the cinema if you can. As we've mentioned, it's something you can watch in the house, but support your cinema. It's important. That's my ethos. So, is there any news we want to speak about before we wrap things up?
The trailer for See How They Run came out, and that looks excellent. I'm very excited about that. Saoirse Ronan and Sam Rockwell obviously doing this kind of like period piece murder mystery, like big sort of Knives Out vibes to it. It's got a huge ensemble cast. I am so there in the front row already. I think it looks perfect. It looks really good fun.
I was a bit suspicious of it because I thought it was going to be very close to sort of Knives Out, but it's not really. Just, it seems that obviously because that was a hit, I expected a slew of sort of inferior films to make their way out, and I thought, oh, this will be the first of it, but it actually looks really good, so it's interesting.
Have you seen the trailer for Predator 3?
No.
TV show or movie?
Movie. It's coming straight to Hulu or Disney Plus in the UK, which I'm a bit disappointed with. I thought the fact it's bypassing cinema. I'd like to see a theatrical release of it, but it's set, I think it's the 1800s in the Predator hunting Native American tribe, so it's very different from the
quite a big change,
films we've seen, and they're also going to release a version of it in the native language.
Interesting.
Ooh.
And what I'm hoping is that version isn't dubbed in sense of they filmed it in English, they're dubbing it over, because it would still just look a bit off. But the trailer for it is worth having a look at. It looks very interesting. And it's directed by the name that doesn't escape me. The director doesn't escape me, but it done Cloverfield Lane.
One thing I did read, which I'm not sure if it's true or just a rumour, but apparently Matt Reeves is eyeing up Benny Safdie to play Harvey Dent in the Batman sequel. Did you read that?
I didn't read that, but that's a pretty good shout.
That sounds quite cool, doesn't it? I'm not sure if it's concrete or if it's just a rumour, but I thought that I can get on board with. That sounds quite cool.
It was Dan Trachtenberg, sorry.
Yes, I think he's a compatriot of C. Robert Cargill. I think they're in the same sort of pod universe because they've both been involved in podcasts related to the /Filmcast and people like that. There's a few of those people, they seem to pop up, or they did pop up in the same sort of podcasts all the time. Some of the ones I listen to. Something I saw that the new James Bond film won't be in cinemas until at least 2025 because they don't have an idea yet. They don't have the story about how they're going to take it forward. And obviously... In
fairness, it does seem a bit like, again, what can they do with it?
Yeah, aye. And they're not going to hire anybody until they've got the story because that will determine sort of direction of whether it's going to be like a young actor or whatever, So.
Did you see Miles Teller's granny on Twitter?
No.
It's a true story. She actually tweeted saying, I think he would, if you're looking, because obviously there was an article about Barbara Broccoli and how she was deciding what she was going to do with it, blah, blah, blah. And she retweeted it saying, I know a really nice young boy that would be perfect for it. He's good at this, he's good at that. He's studied drama, so he can do accents. He can be British if you want him to be. Like, his gran was just out pitching him for a role, which I thought was really sweet, actually. I thought that was like, total granny move. Like, take my grandson, take my grandson. But it was quite...
Of course, one of the things that's come out over the last week or so is the first images from the Barbie movie.
Yes.
I don't know what to make of that at all. It looks fun, but I've got just no idea what it's going to be like. That'll be interesting.
I think it looks amazing, but two things. One, I'm worried we've seen too much of it already, and two, is this like a serious thing where they're pretending to be dolls? Or I don't actually understand the concept of what they're doing, but either way, I'm on board.
It's some kind of live action Toy Story way. Margot Robbie, because it's a very good cast, let's be honest. And again, who knows what the hell this film's going to be about, really.
Yeah, it'll be coming soon anyway, I think. And it looks stuff. I mean, I don't know whether you take it totally. Who's directing it again?
Greta Gerwig.
Yeah, so
like a serious director. Do you know what I mean? That's why I'm like, is this a real thing, or is this like a woman who imagines she's Barbie and this is actually a film about midlife crisis? Or like, I'm just like, what's going on? Because all the costumes are just. I mean, I swear I had this. Not me personally, but I swear my Barbie dolls had the skating costumes that they've been out in this week. Like, they're very early 90s Barbie doll. It was amazing.
Yeah, we just need to wait and see, because I don't think we're going to get until we actually get a trailer. I don't know what it'll be like, but yeah, it should be interesting, if nothing else.
Yes, it's very, very intriguing, but yeah.
It's due to come out on the same day as Oppenheimer, so that'll be another weird double bill at the cinema. I don't know what it'd be better to see first, some Barbie or some Christopher Nolan.
That's a good point. Which way can I see first? Because I'm feeling like I was gonna. The film's also it's written by Noam Baumbach.
Yeah.
Who did A Marriage Story.
Yeah, because they're partners.
They're a couple, aren't they? Yeah. They've been together for a while and they've worked, and they have a relationship together as well. Yeah, it could be very weird.
It could be, but part of me's kind of fearful.
But definitely. So I think that's us.
I think
I'd like to thank all of you, and singular you, for listening. Do I appreciate that?
For getting us to 50.
If you enjoyed the Black Phone, or did enjoy the Black Phone, or have any comments regarding the movie or our review of it, you can send all your hate mail to us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Moviescramble. Or if you're not interested in me or Mary and just want to send sexy emails to John, where can I find you?
Yeah, don't want dick pics, but duck pics will be fine. But not even sexy ducks, just normal ducks, please.
Okay, that says a lot about you. I think it's actually even worse that it's not sexy duck for some reason. I think it's worse that it's just a normal duck.
If it was a sexy duck.
Yeah, Nelson held the duck.
Yeah.
No, that's nightmare fuel. That's not a sexy duck.
No, but that's
see when we finish the pod, Mary, go on to Google and type in "sexy duck" and see what comes up. See,
in fairness, it's the least of my worries with my search history. So,
incognito mode is your friend. Yeah, John, where can they email you some duck pics?
I think I'll get some now. Yeah, obviously it's podcast@moviescramble.co.uk for all your mallards needs.
Ducking needs.
Stick your beak in John's inbox.
Oh no! I'm away. Oh dear.
I think after discussing quite a serious horror movie about a child killer, possible paedophile, to take it out to the level lower than that, I think that's a good time to end it. So thanks all for listening. Thanks, Mary and John, for joining. And the three of us together again is never a bad thing. So go and see the Black Phone, send John duck pics, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye.
You're despicable.